Mr. Rainwater,
Hey, Jow.
would you consider Trailer Park Warlock to be a superhero comic?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, there are moments that sort of veer into that, tiny, tiny little moments, but no, not really.
Have you ever been tempted to like market it in that like aspect?
No, I really haven't. I mean, like for me, I think about it in more I think of it more like a fantasy novel, basically. Like I feel like it has more in common with something like the Dresden Files or yeah, that's the closest comparison I can think of at the moment. But
Has there any like okay, so then the question that I'm trying to get at to you is
okay.
has there ever been pressure on you to make it a little bit more either not even necessarily superhero-y, but like
Yeah.
to veer towards like Tolkien, Lord of the Rings type stuff?
This is something that comes up frequently because last time when we were talking about fan bases, right? I had talked about how there's kind of a not necessarily a schism, but there are two camps within the readers of the story. And one camp really wants it to be like kind of down to earth slice of life, and the other camp wants like that Tolkien type like fantasy lore stuff. And I've been trying to
Juggle.
I've been trying to juggle or straddle that line, because I like both, but I don't want to just do one or the other all the time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
now,
go ahead, John.
well, I was gonna say, often in your work, you've only collaborated, as far as I know, with one other person, right? On like Garage Raja and Bat Monster, correct? The same person?
I've collaborated on a couple of projects outside of that.
Okay.
Some of them I won't go into, but
well, we don't have to get
Austin-
into specifics. But the question that I'm getting towards is do you frequently re-collaborate with people that seem to be on the same wavelength in terms of
fuck yeah.
end goal with you? And have you dealt with, because I mean people have read the title of this podcast already, but the question I'm going to ask is how often do you have to deal with creative differences, as it's often referred to in filmmaking, whereas the person you're working with seems to want to go towards I want to call it the obvious, but it's more the correct word is what's more trendy or easy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had to deal with that kind of, and not necessarily with Austin, but I'm just talking in general. You don't have to name names or projects or anything like that. Sure. But I'm just curious to know if you've had to deal with that, where like the interest of the end game were out of alignment with each other, whereas you felt somebody was going towards the low hanging fruit, where let's do a superhero thing, let's just make it stupid, and you know what I mean, like. And because I'll speak for myself, like when I'm developing a horror thing, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of people who just want to turn it into a schlocky B movie, and I get it. Like a lot of people have fun with that, but I feel like that's the fear where somebody says, "Oh, this isn't a good horror movie." Like they're afraid that the audience will say this isn't a good horror movie. And that way they're building themselves a defense where they can go, well, it's not supposed to be a good horror movie. It's supposed to be kind of shitty. And da-da-da-da. Like, they're not trying. They're just putting up that front because they're afraid to fail. Have you had to deal with any of that in comics?
In comics,
because it's easy to go with like superhero crap in comics.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like with Austin, like that particular situation, that never happened. I've had a couple of situations where I was frequently I have been the person who's like, let's do something that's a little easier to digest, and like which is ironic because now Trailer Park Warlock's sort of the opposite of that. But anyway, but so like just recently, and this kind of goes outside of comics a little bit, but like just recently, me and Soko ended WBB the other podcast that I was doing, right? There were several different reasons for why it ended, but one of the reasons was for Soko. He didn't like the direction I wanted to go with it, which was going to be more. I wanted to go in a direction that was more like a common podcast where it's just a bunch of people dicking around and talking about whatever.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, that was something that I preferred to do. I got tired of talking about stocks all the time. I got so tired of talking about stocks. I was just like I still research and all that stuff. I still deal with that world, but I think because I spent so much time listening to stuff while I'm working, doing so much research, by the end of the day, I was just I don't want to talk about this shit anymore. And
variety is the spice of life. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And what it was appealing towards me more was just having people on and just talking about whatever. And whether or not it relates to stocks or not, I didn't care. I just kind of was thinking of it more of as an excuse to hang out with people,
Yeah.
But like I said, that was one reason of many different reasons.
Sure.
A handful of reasons I really agreed with, because there was stuff like financial situations and all this other stuff. But anyway, so that would be an example. Another example was a comic that I worked on for a little bit that was more of an autobiographical thing. And I always wanted to go for just let's have this be more punchlines. It's more centered on punchlines, more centered on just everyday life cutesy type stuff, and that was not something that the other party wanted to do. So that would be that's one I'm not going to go deep into, but that is an example that I can think of. But with Garage Raja and Bat Monster with Austin, we pretty much were in sync.
I've heard you talk before about how you guys are usually very much on the same page.
Yeah. No, he's one of my favorite people to collaborate with. I'm still collaborating with him on a project that he's doing right now, writing a novel with my dad. That's it's like a military action novel. So
wow.
It's a little bit, it's out of depth for both of us really in terms of subject matter.
Not something I would be Rainwater worked on this? This is outside of his spectrum. Not that I'm putting you in a box, but
it is a little bit. And it's actually been very interesting because it's really pushed me to do more research on what can make it more believable. And same for Austin, I mean, it helps that, part of the reason why it is what it is because my dad has served in the military for a long time. And so he has a lot of that knowledge that we both glean from him,
Yeah.
If I have, because I'm doing the editing for it.
Okay.
So I'm Austin has full reign, and then I'm just kind of I'm trying to rein in stuff where I'm oh, this is going too far, or hey, narratively this isn't working. Can we change tracks if it needs to be changed?
Yeah.
But once again, that's one where we're going through drafts, right? So we were working on this book right now where we both kind of came to a moment where it's because I can't remember who of us brought it up, but I think Austin started it, where go on the second draft. And because of the first draft was this weird prison break story, and it didn't work. We were both this doesn't work. And so he was what if we go with more of a road trip style story where there's a lot of different locales and stuff? I was let's do it. Let's see where it goes. I'm really interested to see where it goes. We only really have 2 drafts, but let's make this one work. So anyway, I'm saying all this to I guess talk about a collaboration where it does it always clicks, because both of us are always ready to sort of embrace to see where it goes next. And it can have an unhealthy dynamic too. I would say in Garage Raja, I probably took on unhealthy dynamics at times because I would I would straight up ignore the script here and there when I was like, I feel like this moment could be more punchy, and then just like go my own route.
Props to Austin for not strangling you, but
No, I know. It's something I think about a lot. There were moments where like he's like, this doesn't work at all, and then I would have to go back to redraw,
yeah.
and he would have more oversight on it. But that was like, I mean, that's the kind of collaboration that comes from when you know somebody like from high school. So like y'all know each other like like really well. So it's not like we didn't have fights. We did. We had arguments about all kinds of stuff creatively. But like it's definitely been one of my favorite collaborations. For you, Jow, like what about you in terms of like collaborative effort?
Well, for me, I've had a lot of problem. Well, I could say the most common thing that's happened to me, and I will go towards really my only body of work right now that I can kind of reference, is Digits, where I mean, don't get me wrong, I've worked on other things, and this has carried over into that even after Digits. I am forever I don't know how to word this other than to call myself an underdog, in that people tend to have very little faith in what I'm able to accomplish or what I'm talking about and like pulling off until I do it. And then like for 5 minutes, they're like, wow, I didn't think you were going to be able to do that. Or wow, I can't believe you pulled that off, blah, 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 blah. And then it resets when I talk about the next thing that I'm going to do. So like there were times on Digits when I had scripted jokes, and Digits was very free form. We were trying to make it kind of mockumentary, so it had to be a little loose. You know what I mean? Like actors could change things here and there, but I saw in my head how the jokes needed to land because I knew when the edit was coming. I knew what it was cutting to. I knew how the camera was framed. You know what I'm saying? Like in my head, I could see everything, how it was all going to work and this and that. And I trust myself, but no one else would trust me. And I get on like your first big project, that's understandable. Everybody kind of wants to make their mark and prove that they know what they're doing and this and that. Even the actors, myself, we're all in that same boat. But at the end of the day, it was my name on the directing thing. It all comes...
Did that dynamic get turned to 11 when you got into the editing stage?
Well, see, and here's where the beauty of it was. That's where I can rescue myself. Because I had moments that I had scripted certain ways. I knew how they were going to play. And actors would take things and do them differently or try to add things. And I would just keep making them do the same take until I could see, all right, he said that line, and then he keeps saying a different line because he thinks that joke's going to be funnier than the one that I have scripted of cutting to a different thing or whatever. But I know he took a half a breath in that last take after he said the line that I needed him to say, where I can slice that and cut to the joke that I wanted to. So that's the beauty of having that editing control, is that, you know, if you're a smart actor, you are thinking about that when you are trying to, I don't want to call it sabotage, or even, I don't want to call it pervert, but alter the original plan.
Yeah.
If you're trying to hijack what the plan was, you know what I mean? You really need to be thinking things through. You can't just throw shit out there willy-nilly and be like, oh, I changed it. No, it doesn't work like that. Like, the editing is really where the final formation, the final rewrite happens. So as soon as I got what I know I need, okay, we'll move on. Oh, that was, I love that you added that. No. It was just one of those instances where I was able to do it. Don't get me wrong. There were times when people would throw shit out there and I was like, that's better than anything I've ever come up with. We're keeping that. And that's great. That's part of the collaboration. But I have a hard time convincing people that I'm going to pull off what I say I'm going to pull off. And up until the point that I do, it's forever a struggle for me. You know what I mean? And artists are bullheads. You and I both know that. I bet we both admit to it. You know what I mean? Like I'm talking right now.
Way.
And everybody thinks they're right. It just really comes down to proving it and having the position to do it. I think if you're an actor and you really want to control something in a film, you need to either A, direct it, B, write it, or C, produce it. That's, you know what I mean? Like if there was a producer that came in and they were like producing whatever and they said, oh, this isn't, you should do this. And I said, well, I want to go this way. Well, they'll say, well, I paid you, so I'm in control here. You know what I mean? But that wasn't the case either. I mean,
that's certainly why you can see, I mean, a lot of television shows, a lot of, well, especially in television shows, you see a lot of the actors end up becoming directors or producers over time, right?
Right.
Because I've noticed, because like, since I'm still rooming with Soko till like the end of this month, or not the end of this month, the middle of this month. Soko's been watching a lot of Seinfeld. So like I've been noticing in the credits, like Jason Alexander, so George, like he takes on a lot of director's credits over the course of the show.
Really?
And so, yeah, and I'm wondering, you know, so Jerry Seinfeld did a lot of the writing with Larry David. It seemed like two of the bigger collaborators who are also doing the acting were like Jason Alexander and Jerry Seinfeld. And I'm assuming, I have no idea, but I'm assuming this is probably due to the fact that, you know, being two of the four main characters in the show, right? And I'm sure they did a certain amount of like improving and kind of going off script or whatever. That was their way of like retaining that kind of retaining the reins a little bit, right? Within the cast and within the like the making of every episode. And I see that a lot, especially in 90s shows. It seemed like a lot of shows where you know, inevitably one of the main actors becomes either a producer or executive producer as the seasons go on. And so I think that's a way of just like maintaining the long-term plan, because, you know, as like actors get more and more involved with the character, they start to have very strong opinions about what they think the character should do, right? Because at a certain point, like they kind of become that character. Another example would be Stargate SG-1, where fucking what's his name, MacGyver guy.
I know who you're talking about. Scott Bakula?
Yeah.
No, not Scott Bakula.
I think it's Richard Dean Anderson. I think that's his name. Anyway, regardless of what his name is, he he plays one of the main characters in the show, and he's also like a major producer on the show, and also like I think he does some direction too. Yeah, it's Richard Dean Anderson.
Okay.
He basically got to a point, right, over the course of creating that show where it's like, I know what this character does. I know what all the characters in the show do. You know, like they take over it. And I mean, if that works collaboratively, that's fine. Because I'm sure there were directors like, I don't want to work on this anymore. Or producers are like, I got other things I want to do. They're bigger goals, you know, in my mind. And that's often how it seems. I would imagine it happens. I don't really know. So
well,
anyway,
there's a lot of contract stuff in there too, because when you sign on for a television show, you're probably stuck for like 3 seasons. So like when they renegotiate for more seasons, whatever, obviously they come in and say, hey, we want EP credit. I want final script approval, like all that kind of stuff. And then you also have to keep in mind, a lot of times on television shows, the director directs 2 episodes and then they're out. And it's another director for the next 2 episodes, and another director. So that changing of the guard, the actor is the one consistent. Same thing with writers. Writers come and go throughout the out of the writer's room. Sometimes EPs and showrunners swap out, like they leave a project. But 9 times out of 10, the most consistent person who stays there is the actor. And that's who the audiences tune in to see, is that actor play that character. So that star power works in as well. So all those things kind of form that perfect volcanic mountain where they can do it. And don't get me wrong, most of the time that actually works out for the best. You know what I mean? Like actors do have a good long-term ingenuity, if that's even a word, about how things should go. And that's good. But sometimes on a movie,
Oh yeah, no, that's a totally different animal.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like a one-shot movie and it's not like based on any previously established property or anything.
Right.
Like you need somebody in there who can corral the
the creativity. But
yeah.
it's very interesting to see how you really, when you start, like, a lot of people have asked me in the past, do I want to collaborate with them? Because they'll, like, most of the time it's people that haven't worked with me already. And usually, 9 times out of 10, it's for writing. They want me to collaborate with writing. And I almost always say no, because I know my voice when it comes to writing. When I see something, I know the angle that I want to come at it from. So, like, at the start of the pandemic, I don't know if you tuned in for that. We're not, believe it or not, folks, me and Rainwater aren't friends on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook that much these days.
I am not on Facebook at all.
Yeah, when we reconnected on Twitter, I never even thought about looking you up on Facebook. But anyway, the point of the matter is this. At the beginning of the pandemic, and we're talking like March 2020, it's currently November of 2021, so it was almost 2 years ago. I hosted a Facebook Live, and I think it went for 3-4 hours maybe, on the Jow Films Facebook page, a quote-unquote writer's room, where it was literally just a live interaction, me on camera, and just talking to people about, hey, let's come up with a story. Let's make a movie. Let's write out a story. We'll go through it beats. Everybody can, throw in suggestions in the chat, and we can ask each other questions. Let's just work out a story. And it was a nightmare because I introduced my process. It's too many cooks in the kitchen. And
right.
So I introduced my process, which is I get a lot of my ideas for some of the stories that I like to tell from music, whether it be just listening to the score, just kind of the wheels turning in my head, or lyrics that I hear in a song, and then I look at them a particular way. So we just played a random song off of my Amazon Echo, and I believe it was Smashing Pumpkins' "Rat in a Cage." Yeah, or I don't know what the name of the actual song is, but I know that's.
I know which one you're. Yeah,
the lyric that did it there. So we played the random song, and we were like, "That's the song. What are the ideas that everybody's thinking of?" And the idea that came to me was, let's have a story literally about two people that are being experimented on. They're kidnapped and they're human experiments, but they're stuck in cages. You know what I mean? With a bunch of other people. And we'll keep it in the cages. Like, it'll be a very minimalist story. It's one of those things that some people that don't like more highbrow type stuff they just sash away. They need explosions and blood and all this kind of crazy shit. But I was like, let's just literally have it about two people who are going to be experimented on, locked in cages next to each other, and the conversations they're having about being there, how they're trying to get out, things that are happening to them as they're being experimented on, and the crazy mad scientist comes and goes and all this kind of stuff. And we can really kind of examine what it feels like to be trapped in somewhere and having changes forced upon you that you weren't looking for, regret that you didn't take advantage. Like, there was so many things I was pulling out of the air. And no. They wanted to go in a whole Stepford Wives disturbing behavior type thing, where it was all this big conspiracy about parents trying to control children, and the grandparents weren't in on it. And I was like, well, this is disturbing behavior. This is Stepford Wives. This is something we've already seen. Why do we have to see that again? What's the point of making this if we're not examining a new theme, if we're not approaching this material differently? Like, it is that very much, it's the same concept, you know what I mean, of being experimented on against your will. But the angle I saw it from was a very minimalist, two people next to each other in cages. And, you know what I mean, the conversations that they have about being human, and as that changes and stuff like that. And I thought that was the interesting way to go about it. I was outvoted by several people participating in the writer's room. And that's why I don't collaborate. It's very, people are just like, oh, because that's what they know. That's what they've seen work, and they're too afraid, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. I could be very wrong. I could be very stuck up and snobby about it. But it just seemed very obvious to me. It's been done before. I've seen those movies. I've seen them a bunch of different ways, a bunch of times, and you can change one or two things, and it's like, okay, you're free of being sued of copyright infringement, but you know what I mean? Like, you're not adding anything to the medium, the genre, the story. That's what bothers me, and that's
what
really
I was
why
thinking
I don't
about
like doing
listening to you talk about that too. I feel like, I imagine that most artists are in that position where if they don't have to collaborate, they generally will try to avoid it as much as they can, right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like everybody has in their head like a dream team if they could, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that exists, and there is something to be said about the advantages if you can afford to collaborate, if you can find the right team for it, right? Because, like, there's a part of me that imagines, oh, how cool would it be, like, to have, like for Trailer Park Warlock or any comics that I do in the future, to be able to have, like, a colorist that I could work with who, like, likes my work and then understands it on a level that might be a little bit different from mine.
Sure.
It can very exclusively think about, like, the color palettes and how, they can make my line work, like, pop maybe better than I can. To me, that's appealing to think about. Whether or not I'm going to ever meet somebody who can do that, I don't know,
right.
But it is something that comes to my mind every once in a while where I've been thinking about the project that I'm doing after Trailer Park Warlock. So,
are you about to leak some shit right now?
No, I'm not going to go too far in. I've gotten some inspiration while I've been in Taos, New Mexico.
That's awesome.
Part of what has inspired the story is also thinking about the way it's going to be made, the format of it. That's usually where I start with on stories, is thinking in regards to very bare bones, or
the lens.
Not bare bones. Yeah, like the basics, right? And where I build off from. And something that I have thought about, and I don't know if I'm going to do it this way, but I have thought about, like, gosh, it would be super handy to have a background artist to work with. And I can, like, focus very intensely on, like, the character work,
Yep.
And not necessarily like they would do all the background work, but to have somebody to sort of, like, help me with doing background work so I can cut down on time. And then also have somebody think more in terms of the environment, because that is something that's going to be very important in the story. Or at least to collaborate with somebody who can, like, kind of point me in some directions in terms of thinking about environment, in terms of thinking about giving an environment character in ways that I haven't quite yet. Because I've seen background artists for animation, in comics, but specifically in animation, I've seen background artists who do magic, like, just fucking magic, where I'm just like, I would never think of drawing that scene like that. I would never think about using those colors. There are clearly people who think about it on a level deeper than I can if I'm doing every single element.
Yeah.
The panel, where they, that's why they end up that's why animation has background artists, right? Is to have people who specialize in that field and can kind of, like, collaborate with a director to say, like, okay, but I think that, given what you're telling me about the scene, we need to think about these kind of colors. We need to think about this kind of lighting. We need to think in this direction about what's being set up. Does the background need to be flatter? Does it need to have more depth of field? Like, shit like that.
There's definitely something to be said about when you collaborate, when you have a second pair of eyes, and those eyes are only tasked with focusing on one thing, they can definitely elevate that one thing if they're not particularly thinking about all the bajillion of other things that the main filter, the director, so to speak, if you will, has to think about. Like, that's the key of collaborating, is that if you have someone who stays in their lane, I guess, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can add so much.
It's something that I still haven't really learned how to find, you know? Like, I haven't ventured out enough to really know who that, you know, like, to be like, oh, okay, this person would be perfect for this role within production.
Yeah.
You know? But I know it exists. I see people do it all the time. It clearly exists.
It's the people that love that particular thing. I will always think about, I forget where I read this. The Dark Knight Rises. Okay. Supposedly, I believe it was Hans Zimmer giving the interview. Supposedly, if you remember in The Dark Knight Rises, there's a scene at the football field right before Bane blows everything up, where there's someone singing the national anthem. And according to, and this is just from like distant recollection, Hans Zimmer in an interview, I believe, he said he was talking to Christopher Nolan, and Christopher Nolan was asking him, we should probably get some kind of pop star or something like that to be singing the national anthem or something, right? That's usually what they do at football games, like Alicia Keys or, you know, like something like that. And Hans Zimmer looked at him and goes, no, you need to go to the core of what this movie is really about, which is about a sad, melancholy, lost and lonely little boy. And Christopher Nolan was like, nope, you're absolutely right. I'm wrong. This is exactly what I need to do. And if you go back and watch Dark Knight Rises, it's a little boy singing the national anthem.
Yeah.
And I think actually, you know what? I take that back. I think that was Christopher Nolan that gave that interview and talked about how he was wrong, and how Hans Zimmer added that to the thing. I think that's what happened. And
I mean, it was an incredibly good call, because that's one of the trailers, right?
They focused on that.
That was one of the more memorable aspects of those trailers. Because you're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen in this movie?
Yeah,
you know,
because it would have been very easy to call up Alicia Keys. You know, of course she's gonna right after Dark Knight. Who the fuck would say no to working in Dark Knight Rises? But the call to keep it focused on that artistic thing, because Hans Zimmer's area was music, but he's approaching that music not just because, oh, this will sound cool, or, you know, oh, I really want to play with this new piece of technology or this new arrangement or anything like that. He's always thinking about, well, what is this about? What am I conveying through the music? Like, that is the kind of artist that you want. You don't want Hans Zimmer to show up and go, oh, I think Tom Hardy should say the line this way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's way out of his wheelhouse. But Hans Zimmer loves the music. He loves the scoring aspect, and he loves the art behind it. And to come up with that suggestion to a director is within his lane. You know what I mean? They're still dealing with a musical moment of the particular film, and it elevates it. Like, that's, to me, is the thing. Like, right now, I've talked a couple times about we're getting towards the holiday season, and one of these days I am going to crack out this script that I wrote. It's a short script called Don't Open Till Christmas, and it's about Santa Claus coming back to the North Pole, and he finds a gift box still in his bag, and he's like freaking out that he forgot to deliver it or whatever, and then he comes to find out it was actually something that was given to him, like a kid snuck it in his bag before he left. So he's got a gift that he can't open until Christmas, and by the time he gets home, or when he gets home and realizes it, it's already past 12, and Mrs. Claus won't let him open it for a year. So he spends the year trying to figure out what the gift is, putting it through x-ray machines, all the kind of shit that little kids do, and so on and so forth. I won't give it away, but the point of the matter is this. I've wanted to do this film either as a classically animated or a stop motion animated, like a claymation type thing, for so long, because I want to capture that nostalgic feel to it. And I have tried to draw, I have tried to model clay, and it is just outside of my wheelhouse. I cannot do it. So I have finally started to come to the sole sucking acceptance that I'm gonna have to collaborate with somebody at some point and get them to do character design and do something and bring in other people on the project, because I just can't do it all by myself. That's what I did on Digits. Yeah. And while I would consider Digits a success in many ways, that film suffers because I tried to do a billion jobs. I was producer, director, writer, cinematographer, not really sound guy, but no one was really sound guy. We had actors holding the boom mic most of the time. So, you know what I mean? Like, it was really like a bare bones operation. And part of that was because I had too big of an ego to allow someone else to come in. And I also didn't have any money, but that's besides the point. I was too much of an egotist, a control freak. That's the right word. To let anybody else do it. You know what I mean? And I think that the film, looking back at the film now, I do think it suffers. I thought it was going to make it better because it would be solely at my control, my vision. But then at the same time, I look at things and go, ooh, I would do that differently now. And I bet you somebody who knows what they're doing in that field would have saw that then. And that's one of the biggest regrets that I have, is not finding people who do love particular fields within filmmaking and having them collaborate. But it's hard because, like I said, you're especially in filmmaking, and people that work in film will identify with this when they hear this, but there is always someone trying to hijack your film on set. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You have a crew of 15 people or 40 people. There's one person at least who thinks they know more or better than the director. 9 times out of 10, it's the actors or the producers. But the point of the matter is this: there's always someone who's second judging your decisions, and that's not the best way to achieve something. So it's like how you said, finding those people is the hardest part of collaboration, is finding those people who enjoy elevating one particular thing, knowing that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right. Well, and what makes it hard too is it's not enough that they're good at it. Y'all also have to click. Yeah. Like, you'll have to
you got to get
be
along
on the same level, right?
That's my biggest problem. People fucking hate me, but
because to me, the thing I worry about is collaborating with somebody where they don't give a shit about the story, and so for them it's just a paycheck or whatever. Yeah. You know.
Yep.
And so the work they end up putting out is not. It's not the same level of care that you're going to be giving the story.
Yeah.
Which you end up just creates chaos, in production. It's the biggest. It's funny because I feel like for me, I think it would be the next threshold to enter or to cross in terms of stepping up my abilities as a writer and as an artist to have other people to work with to help me into not only stepping up production, but stepping up the quality, because I know that for myself, there are limitations to what I can accomplish with the time that I'm given, which is always ultimately I think something every artist kind of comes in confrontation with at some point or another.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially if they're doing something that is a multimedia type affair, sure. With film, I mean, I can't even imagine where it's you got to find music, you got to find actors, you got to find somebody who says, doing it all by yourself is quite nearly impossible unless you're going to do just
Digits. Seriously, if you ever throw in Digits again, take a look at how many times my name pops up in the credits. There were points where I was considering, and I may have even done it, I don't even know, but I know I was considering making up fake names to put as department head people and this and that, just so it wouldn't look like I was complete one-man operation.
Well, hey, I mean, you have that to compare to on that level, it's you and Neil Breen, right? I feel
I'm not on Neil Breen's level. He's way above me.
I would not say that actually. As much as I enjoy Neil Breen films, I think Digits is actually a competently put together story that's understandable and not just
very
like,
true. But it was. You can't argue that it wasn't a vanity act, because I told my story. You know what I mean? And that's basically what Neil Breen does a lot of the times too. But now that's out of my system, so I really do need to make a movie that's not about me. 2023, folks. But I guess we should probably get to the point with. I mean, you said it's so hard to look to find those people. Do you think there's any way to find them? Those people that click with you, that are good to elevate? Because let's be honest, when you find someone who's good, chances are other people have already discovered that they're good, and they are highly in demand. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, the people that are worth collaborating with are like not readily available. Someone has already clicked with them. Someone's already snatched them up, a bigger paycheck, a bigger opportunity, whatever it may be, more creative input, whatever like that. So, you know, just philosophically speaking, do you think there's anything artists can do to expedite the process of filtering out those that won't collaborate well and those that will? Because I'll tell you right now, it's kind of like the old saying of never hire or never work with your friends or family or whatever like that, because, you know, it goes past the whole, oh, you might have to fire them, this or that. But there's and this is solely speaking from Digits, there is an ease of comfort where people will take things for granted. It's like, we're on set. Oh, we're just goofing around, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, I had to pay $500 for us to be here for 3 hours. I had to lug all this equipment here. I had to get the lighting set. I have to get the audio set. I had to pay this actor $50 because they had to take off of work. I had to figure out how we were going to do this. You know what I mean? And then I got to focus on getting the shot right and the focus. But you're just goofing around. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I mean, that would be my thing, is don't work with friends. But go ahead, what you think.
For sure, that could be a good rubric. I would say, to create a certain amount of like, the rubric I would work from. First and foremost, that person has to have experience at least similar to your experience in terms of creating something.
Okay.
So, like, I'm not going to work with somebody who hasn't done a book. I've done I've done a shit ton of comics. I'm not going to work with somebody who's like never done it, because they don't understand the experience. They don't understand what goes into producing any kind of story. But I mean, I'll say particularly comics. Like, I guess, and here's the thing, is like that could potentially be interchangeable. If I met somebody, like if I met a writer, and they didn't have experience with comics, but they wrote a shit ton of screenplays or something.
Yeah, that's transmutable. That's
transmutable. I think that you could apply that similarly with other aspects. Like somebody who's worked as a painter or something, and they've done a ton of paintings. You've seen their work. They probably have some amount of experience and understanding, possibly with drawing panels for a comic, with doing like cover work, stuff like that. So anyway, my whole point is, the first qualifier needs to be somebody with a level of experience that's around your level of experience. And if you want to go a little lower than that, at least, I mean, this is like you see in like in a lot of like hiring stuff where it's like must have 5 years of experience or whatever. You have to set that kind of template for yourself and be like, okay, what would be enough experience for me to know that somebody understands the effort that goes into this? Because that's first. Like, that's the most important, is somebody has to have the understanding of what is involved in the effort.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if money is going to be involved too. But I mean, on any level, I feel like that's got to be part of the rubric. After that, right? There are aesthetic choices that you have to make. Does this person's style is it at least within the same parking lot as mine? Do we click on in terms of aesthetics? Style, whatever. Aesthetic choices. That can get a little bit harder to figure out, but usually you can figure out pretty quick by looking at their work and seeing. I mean, yeah, you're gonna know whether or not you want somebody based on
portfolio.
A, yeah, portfolio. A, do you like your work? B, does that work go with what you're doing? Because you could like somebody's work and it's not really the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
.
That's something a lot of artists need to understand. Is sometimes when you get rejected, it's not because you're quote unquote bad. It's because it's not the particular style that someone's looking for right now. But that doesn't mean that they won't be looking for that for something else, or you know what I mean? Like you just don't you don't fit the mold. It's
if you're doing like a horror movie, you're probably not gonna hire somebody who does like children's books for like creature design. Probably. Right. I mean, I could see ways in which it could work in an interesting way, but generally.
Sure. But yeah,
that's not gonna be the.
You want to go. You don't want to go with, like I said, the low hanging fruit. Like, yeah, Tom Savini is fucking amazing. Right? There's no doubting that he can do. Tom Savini. What?
I need context for who Tom Savini is.
Tom Savini is like a legendary makeup artist and like a prosthetics, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
He really was like he made his name. I think it was the original Friday the 13th, when Kevin Bacon gets killed and they have a spear coming through his throat from underneath the bed. And Tom Savini was the one that figured out, well, we can just put Kevin Bacon's head here underneath the bed and then have like a fake dummy for the rest of the body. And then we have the thing shoved up and then Kevin Bacon just acts and everybody figures it out. So like he came up with a whole bunch of stuff and he came from there. He was, you seen Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah.
He was the guy that played Sex Pistol with the gun in his crotch.
Okay.
He did a lot of the makeup effects for the vampires in there. I think he was the guy who designed them all. But like he's like a legendary guy known for, horror movies and gruesome special effects and stuff like that. So if you're making a horror movie, if like you got Tom Savini, like yeah, that absolutely puts, at a certain level, but there's also going to be, it's good and bad because yeah, you're getting a quality, you're getting a name, you're getting something that's, going to be like what you're looking for. But it's also highly unlikely it'll be something new and refreshing, if that makes any kind of... So, like, I remember when I was watching, I think it was the making of Shape of Water. And I think it was either Doug Jones or Guillermo del Toro who was talking about the paint job on the Amphibian Man and how he was like... I think Guillermo del Toro was like, I don't want the paint job on the suit to match the contour of like the scales or anything like that. Like I want the colors to bleed randomly. I want the, them to transition or gradient from here to there, not just because there's an abrupt indentation in the suit and stuff. I don't want it to just stop hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was a freshness to that design that he was looking for. So, I mean, if you get someone who's a big name like Tom Savini, you might get some pushback on that because he's going to want to do Tom Savini work. He's going to want to do the thing that's, he's known for. And
that's an interesting thing to point out. Like, do you want to hone in or do you want to innovate, basically?
And there's no wrong answer. That's important to note.
Yeah. There is no wrong answer. It's just a question. It's a
stylistic, aesthetic choice. Absolutely.
It's a qualitative question you have to ask yourself before, choosing somebody, right? Basically.
And then I think it comes back to the Hans Zimmer, Christopher Nolan thing. Those are the kind of questions that I like to ask. So like when I interview or when I audition actors, a lot of people just want to see them act. I like asking questions about a particular actor's process. I like to know how they go about approaching characters And when I start getting answers that sound like ones that I would give, the performance, I don't know if this is good or bad, but the performance almost becomes secondary, because I feel like if I am in agreement with the intent of the process, I can get them where we both want to be. Does that make sense? Like, I can be the arbiter if they can, because I think there's an instantaneous, because if I know what they're saying is what I want and what I want to do, when I say similar things, they'll probably see the same thing in me. And that is immediately, and this is my recommendation to artists, there's an immediate trust between the artists. It's like, oh, okay, we're talking the same language. And I think that means more than talent, ability, whatever it is you want to call it. It's, you know what I mean? Like, if you can trust someone, and this comes back to my problem where I have a lot of problems with people who don't necessarily believe that I can pull off the things that I can say that I'm going to pull off. If I can get someone who does trust me, they, you know, and that's literally most of the time when people say, well, why am I doing this? I do take a cryptic thing because I do like getting the wow factor when they see it, when it's all put together. But I usually will respond with, trust me. And if they do trust me, it works. And when they don't trust me, it takes forever to get there. And that's the thing. So I would say if you're an artist and you're looking for those people that are worth collaborating with, you need to find your way. It doesn't necessarily have to be mine where I interview people and with loaded questions that I already know the answer to. But you need to find a way to establish trust, or that you'll both be able to recognize trust in each other. And I think that supersedes everything else. I think that's how you find true collaborators, is when you can trust in each other's abilities. Like, if I see someone performing and I know they know what the fuck they're doing, I trust them intuitively. Like, I can ask them a question. I was like, well, why did you raise an eyebrow after you made that statement? And then they say to me, oh, well, I wanted him to be a little bit suspicious about it. And, you know, my dog, you know, he raises an eyebrow when he gets suspicious. And I thought that would be a good, you know, visual way to emphasize that point, because it's a long shot. Like, I know you're in a wide lens right now, so it's really important that the audience sees my eyebrow go up. So I really want to, and then I know they're thinking about, okay, I got to get this intent across. How do I do that? And then how do I really nail it in? So maybe if they don't read it in my tone, because I have to say this line away or otherwise it'll sound weird. But if I raise that eyebrow, the audience will get that something else is going on. That kind of conversation between artists, to me, is invaluable. That's the kind of thing where I can be like, all right, I'm not going to have to ask him anymore, why did you do that? Why is this happening here? He's thinking on the same thing that I am. And if I'm thinking something and I'm like, oh, I want you to seem very friendly here, and then he goes, oh no, I wanted to seem very angry, then we'll ask each other the Hans Zimmer question. Well, what's this really about? What are we doing? Why do you think that? Why do I think that? And then there's no ego more involved anymore. Do you know what I mean? And that's the brilliant part of it, is that ego gets removed and you're both like, this is the right choice. And you don't have any problem saying it either. You're both like if I'm wrong, I'll be like, nope, you're right. And if he's wrong, he'll be like, no, you're right. And let's do it that way.
That's truly one of the best working relationships. And I haven't, it's been a while since I've had that, but it is like a great feeling, because that's like one of those situations where where all participants are like trying to make this thing better, right? Than like any singular person could do. Yeah. Basically.
And that's I think, and that's I guess that boils down to my number one recommendation. If you find someone who's passionate about your project, that's the foot in the door. So you know what I mean? Like, if somebody's just like, if they immediately want to start talking about their rate or how much they're gonna get, that's when you put them in the maybe if I have no other choice pile. And the people who are like, even if they don't have credits or anything like that, the people who are passionate about something and, you know, aren't crazy, because I've dealt with my crazies. They're passionate about my project, but they're also fucking insane. Hashtag Trevor. There's, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to arbitrate that, I guess, as an artist too. And that, you know, most of us are pretty good at observing and understanding motivation of people. Like that's just a genuine artist trait most of the time. We can get to the bottom of someone's intentions, like personal intentions, fairly quickly. So if someone's off their rocker, yeah, no. But if they're a competent person and they seem interested in what you've done and they want to be a part of it, and like you said, they want to add to it, elevate it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person you want to be around. And your ego immediately diminishes because, like I said before, rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody's going to win if we all make the best thing. Whereas if someone's there to get their name on a poster or make a big paycheck or, you know what I mean, something like that, that's when you're setting yourself up for failure in terms of collaboration. Yeah. That's really what you need to observe. Did you have anything else to add? Because I think we've kind of nailed down really what the key is.
You nailed down all the other things that I was thinking of. I can't think of anything else to add to that. I'm sure other stuff will come back to me, but I think that's a good basic cheat sheet to work from.
And it's the best way. I think it's the best way, and quote unquote creative differences. I think it's the best way to let someone out of a project too. If you have to firing people and letting people off stuff is not fun ever. It's really not fun. But you can come to a mutual agreement by not letting someone feel like they suck or they're bad or this or that.
Yeah.
By having a conversation of, well, what do you think this is? What do you think we're trying to accomplish here? And when you realize that goals are differing, or you know what I mean, like there's a different theme in mind. Like if my theme is about this and your theme's about that, then we're making two different things. And it's like, you know what? I would love to help you do that, but you're gonna have to do that on your own project because
it's also harder to. It's harder to take it personally when you can just point to the laundry list and say, well, here's the reasons why it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have you. It's not you. It's not even me. It's just not what this is.
Yeah. It's just, here's the pre-established rules that we have, and this is why it doesn't work. And that's, anyway.
But, hopefully you guys have taken away some good ways to kind of navigate the scene of collaboration, because let's be honest, collaboration is necessary not only to help you out as an artist to make deadlines, to add different perspectives and diversity to your work. They're also a great networking technique. You know what I mean? Like it's a great way to get more jobs and get opportunities and stuff like that. Is, if someone gets overloaded with too much stuff, they'll say, hey, go, here's this guy Jow. He really knows what he's doing with scripts. Talk to him. He'll come on and help out. I know he'll be interested in this. You know what I mean? Like little things like that. So it's always good to collaborate. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So while we all, like Rainwater said, we actively try not to collaborate, you are going to have to at some point, unless you are a writer. And even then, you got to have an editor or something like that. And
you're always going to be working with somebody else on something.
Even if the person you're working with is your audience, as Rainwater pointed out before about, one half of the audience wants something and the other half wants something else. He's collaborating with them. He really is. Yeah. He's got to, I don't want to say he's got to feed them both, but it serves him well to listen to those opposing factions and kind of, give himself that opportunity to, like we talked about before, variety is the spice of life.
Right. And audience, the collaborative process between the artist and the audience is one where the audience is going to pick up the stuff that will sometimes pick up stuff you're not paying attention to, or take for granted.
Yeah.
And so give yourself some amount of direction going forward if you're doing more within the framework of that story. It's definitely, I think there's some people who behave towards audience like, totally passive and should be ignored. But I mean, reality is like they are at the very least, the audience is sort of your thermometer, as to how you're doing. And so it's not, it shouldn't be ignored at all as part of the collaborative process. But yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, collaboration's hard.
Yes.
So like make it as easy for yourself and for your collaborators as possible. have a rule set for yourself for what is like a good metric, for collaboration, and then go from there. And there will inevitably be like the hidden variable, which is just the feeling, the intuitive feeling you get with that person. Do y'all click? Like all the rules we just set up, that still doesn't necessarily hone in on do you and the other person click, because that's going to be something you're gonna have to fill out for yourself.
Because I've been in times when I've had a best friend that I wanted to murder in the street in front of my house. No, literally, like we literally had to get arbitrators. We had 2 different mutual friends represent us as lawyers in the middle of the street at, I think it was like 11 o'clock at night, because we were having such a heated argument over where things were going and what was being done and stuff. So we had to use 2 mutual friends as lawyers to filter our arguments and discuss with each other to work out a problem. It was pretty tough. That was digits, I will add. But that ended up working for that. We were able to have those people mediate, and that was a thing. Sometimes that's necessary when you're in the thick of it. I would not recommend, knowingly going into a situation like that, because all it does is add stress and takes time away from an already lengthy process, stressful process. So if you can avoid it, absolutely avoid it. But that'll about do it for this episode. Thank you guys. We are coming up on our 1-year anniversary. I want to thank people who have listened to us for a year with our art philosophy and stuff. We have more coming to you in the next coming year. We're going to do a little bit of a rebranding very soon. Nothing too crazy, but a little bit of fun, because we're artists and things get stale, things get bored. So we're going to change it up a little bit. Mr. Rainwater, thank you as always for being my wonderful co-host.
Good talking.
We will see everybody next week. Take it easy.